regarding the salaries that are somewhat shocking to the average person in Montana, who gets by on maybe $50,000-$60,000 a year, and when they hear that a university president is being recruited for possible over $300,000 a year, the eyebrows go up. And so my first question to you is, just exactly what does a university president do in Montana?
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, very good conversation and dialogue, and very understandable in terms of the concerns and the important scrutiny that should be applied when we're talking about spending money, public money, at a public institution. A president at a university such as the University of Montana is the chief executive officer of an institution that employs about 2,500 professionals and staff members. It is also like a city in terms of having some 10, 12, 15,000 students at any given time, with a 24/7 public safety operation necessity. It is also like a major research company with almost $100 million a year in competitive federal cutting-edge national research that brings money into Montana, not state-funded research. So in addition to being a major employer in town with 2,500 employees and having to provide 24/7 public safety for the equivalent of a city of 10 or 12,000 people, and being like a research company, President also has the complexities of overseeing a complex but important in our society operation like collegiate athletics. And the business side and the student athlete side of major athletics, and having some acumen there. And let's not forget education. So there's the teaching and learning side of things. About $150 million a year in state funding and tuition funding goes directly into the classroom at the University of Montana for the core instructional enterprise. Housing and dining services. We have competitive proprietary business operations with residence life and dining services that have to compete, not unnecessarily and not overly aggressively competing, but to a level of providing students the kind of service that they need to be able to attend and complete classes successfully. So by the time you take the $150 million a year in the core teaching and learning part of the instruction, and you add almost $100 million a year in competitive cutting-edge external research that brings money into the state, does not come from the state, throw onto that several million for running a business in housing and dining services, and throw in the aspect of the collegiate athletics that seems to be important to Montanans, the public safety piece, student health services, suicide prevention, mental health. We're responsible for every one of these angles. So it's a complex organization with a budget of about $300 million a year and 2,500 employees at a salary that is probably substantially less than the compensation for a local chief executive at a nonprofit hospital in any one of the communities where we have a campus. And that's how it adds up.
Let's talk about the salaries. I know that when people look at higher education is a totally different world for most people, especially when you get deep in the weeds and of all of the foundations and all of the various ways that people move from one position to another. The top president in private college gets over $5 million a year. and of course here in the Big Sky Conference, and of course here in Montana, we have two land grant universities, both heritage universities, and I understand that both individuals are required to be paid the same. But when we think about all that you have just mentioned, and if you add in the complexity, if you will, of the fact that the University of Montana has had some incredibly unique challenges in the last 5 years, with the investigation from the Department of Education and Civil Rights, and then of course the NCAA that came through and did their investigation as well. There were some clouds hanging around the University of Montana that haven't completely quite dissipated yet. Even though they've been dealt with, those memories remain. And so trying to find someone to come to the University of Montana who is qualified to take all that on at a salary that you had mentioned is far less than what may be offered even in other parts of the West here, that's got to be a unique challenge for you.
The compensation competitiveness is a unique challenge because, I mean, Missoula, in terms of what we can offer, is $50,000 to $60,000 behind Pocatello or Grand Forks, and Grand Forks is in North Dakota. For those who don't know, the four surrounding states average $50,000 to $60,000 a year more in terms of their president pay, but that's okay. That's the unique aspect of the pay in the Montana University system. The other aspects that you mentioned are not unique in terms of struggles and adversity with important issues like sexual violence prevention and awareness, because there are now almost 200 universities in the nation around the country that are tied up in Department of Justice investigations like the University of Montana was 5 years ago. And fortunately, the University of Montana was able to work through it and has become the model response university for the Department of Justice in showing other institutions how to handle this. University of Montana is certainly not the only institution in recent years that has had some challenges and adversities with some NCAA compliance requirements. Enrollment, the University of Montana is closer to the national norm struggles right now. All but two campuses in the university system had reduced enrollment last year, and there are more campuses across the nation with declining enrollment than growing enrollment. So a candidate from outside of Montana, I believe, is going to look at the University of Montana in a very tremendously positive light for all that Montana and Missoula and the university have to offer. A candidate who is of the level of seasoned experience that we're hoping for is going to also be aware of and learn about those challenges that the University of Montana has faced and is facing, and is going to recognize that they are the same kinds of challenges or opportunities that other institutions across the nation are facing, and those will be our competing institutions for the top candidates, and we're going to be ready to sell all that Montana has to offer for our non-monetary attributes first.
Sure. Now, I understand there is a date in July where applications will be accepted up until that point. How long after that will we be able to find out if we have any finalists, or how will that process go?
The initial vetting of applicants will be in late July, and then the committee will be winnowing down that list with the goal of bringing tremendously qualified finalists to campus in September or October for public forums and public interviews.
So basically, Sheila Stearns will be the interim president through this entire process.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Just one more quick thing.
Yes.
Quick thing. The one thing that stuck in my memory was Dr. Thomas Crady was able to come here with an extra $70,000 that was part of the deal that I understand kind of raised a few eyebrows. Would that type of situation be possible with the new president, should it be necessary?
usually in a search process, compensation is the very last question that is addressed after we, go through the extensive process that culminates in us identifying the candidate with whom we would like to have those discussions. So it's just too early to tell.
Got it.
But a concept. Back to the heart of the question about how in Montana we are not used to seeing the kinds of compensation levels that exist around the rest of the nation. One thing that I'd like to stress is that in the Montana university system, we definitely understand and share that concern. There's no job in the university system that is more important than any other job in Montana, and we know that all Montanans could have opportunities to earn higher compensation in other states. So we're not pretending that a university president or any university job is any different in that regard. We share that, and we serve the public. What we do find is that in the university system, probably more than a lot of Montana employers, we're forced to actually have to go onto that national market more often than maybe a lot of Montana employers. And that's when that differential between the Montana compensation and the other states becomes more than just a statistic, but it becomes a real material, actual challenge or maybe even impediment in our ability to recruit and retain, to hire and to keep good, capable people to serve Montana students, Montana employers, Montana communities. So for us, the right amount of compensation is not what some survey says or what other states pay, but it is that amount at which we are able to secure good, capable people to provide Montanans with the quality of education that they expect and they deserve. And we really don't start out with any preconceptions about what that amount shall be. We start out with a goal of having a comprehensive, broad, deep search for talented, capable people from which the community of Missoula then will get to participate in ultimately providing feedback and having a role in deciding who that person should be when we have the public forums and interviews this fall.